Real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon for all their support, because without their help, the upgraded content that you see on the channel, that you really see in the video essays and a few of the lore discussions would not be possible without their help. But over on the Patreon, you get sneak peeks of videos months in advance. Patrons also get priority on the Q&As. Every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul, and I give away a lot of good goodies in that. And it's also just really cool to talk to you guys in the DMs, and if some of you guys have theories that you want me to talk about on the channel, obviously I will talk about your theories. Just send them to me over on the Patreon. But with that being said, let's get into the review. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explained here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, episode 253. And now that episode 253, it looks like we have the final episode setting up this climax. Feels like we've been saying that for a while, but this feels like the final episode before the climax, because all the cards right now are on the table. And for people who were wondering last week, where was Kawaki? Congratulations. If you predicted that Kawaki sneaked onto that ship without anybody noticing, you are a great prognosticator, and it looks like our boy has finally learned to suppress his chakra without being noticed. If you guys are familiar with the manga, you know what that entails. That is huge foreshadowing for something coming up. So chalk one up to the anime showing us something that got revealed in the manga and really felt like it came out of nowhere. So chalk one up for the anime for kind of addressing that point right there. Now, this episode itself starts off where Boruto's staring down Ikada, and Ikada realizes that it's Boruto, and he gives the order essentially to allow Boruto to enter onto their ship, and he says that he's going to be the one that takes care of it. And what we end up seeing is that when Boruto gets close and he begins starting to talk to Ikada, he's like, hey, you know, when we told Big Boss Kage that we were coming over here, he gave us this boat. Isn't this cool? You see Boruto trying to appeal to emotion at this point, trying to find that common ground to try and reason with Ikada. And what this man ends up doing is essentially, he says, yeah, I thought I recognized that boat. And before Boruto can do anything, he essentially taps into his power that controls the sea, which goes back to something I said when we saw Ikada and Boruto on the boat and they're traveling to that shipbuilding island. The thing I said was like, hey, it kind of makes sense if Ikada's powers are linked to controlling those sea waters, because you got the Shiome, and you also have it where every time he's getting upset, the seas would kind of become rougher in terms of like the seawater and everything. And when he got really pissed off, everything changed. You see that here, and he's able to make these little mini twisters of water that end up destroying the ship. And before they can drown, Mitsuki shows up clutch. Mitsuki, as they're all in the air, he shoots off his arm using that body modification jutsu, and he then grabs hold of Boruto and Sarada and pulls them onto the ship. And that's when you have Ikada and Boruto face to face right here. And as Boruto tries to reason with Ikada, that's when you get that realization that things are not going to go the way that Boruto wants them to, because not only did this man destroy one of the ships that Kage had built and he knew knowledge about it, but when Boruto tries to reason with him, Arayumi just shows up, and this man is just talking trash right to this man's face. He's laughing really hard, and you kind of get the foreshadowing that Ikada doesn't know the full truth, because if you pay attention to the language being used, he said that you killed my sister, which we know that's true. Boruto hasn't accomplished that. He said you killed Funamushi. Boruto hasn't accomplished that. But he also said that you killed my brother. And at first I said, well, Chojuro killed Tenma. It's like, wait a second. Arayumi likely told him that Boruto probably killed Isari, which means that Ikada doesn't know that his father turned on him. That's interesting. I wonder if that's one of the things that eventually turns Ikada away from his father. I think that that's likely it, because just as Boruto is seeing that there are two sides to war and that not all forces are good and evil, because up to this point when Boruto's been fighting people, he's never really got that realization. Momoshiki and Ishiki were just these chakra fruit gathering evil people. Ao was just a mercenary. Kar were these monsters that need to be stopped. Shojoju is just a criminal with no redeeming factors. This is the first time where he's had to walk that moral gray area, and I think that that's gonna be the same for Ikada. He's gonna realize that the Funato wasn't all it was cracked up as well. So I kind of like what you're seeing there, and I like as all this stuff is going on, Chojuro, his aide, is like, yo, are we going over there? We about to swap hands right now? I got my sword ready. I'm ready to go poke on somebody. And what we end up seeing is that Chojiro's sticking to his promise because they're monitoring the communication, and Chojuro says that the amount of time that we promised them hasn't elapsed yet, and I'm not going to go back on my word to Boruto. I'm going to give him the opportunity to try and make things right. I have no problem with that. But you see Chojuro also realizing that it looks more and more likely that Boruto's not going to be able to reach Ikada. At one point, the Funato throw out their spears in front of Boruto, put him at his neck. Ikada kind of waves him off, and you get this moment where when Boruto tries to appeal to stopping the war, and he says that the Mizukage will pull back his troops if the Funato pull back theirs, it goes back to what Chojuro kind of pointed out to him, which is that neither side's going to buckle on this. Neither side's going to show weakness in this, and there's too much distrust between the two. And you see it in the language that Arayumi uses, where he says that we're not going to fall for that smooth-talking Mizukage, which, again, that kind of goes back to what I've been saying before. This arc right here is essentially the equivalent of walking into Doctor Strange 2 and not watching any of the Marvel TV shows, in particular Loki and WandaVision, and not watching Spider-Man No Way Home, because essentially you have a lot of plot points that tie into that movie that do not get spelled out right in your face in the actual movie itself. This arc takes a similar approach. This arc is paying off a lot of subcontext that was added over the course of 6 light novels. And so I like what you're seeing right here, because essentially all this conflict that's been going on between the Funato and all these other clans on these different islands, and the changes that the Land of Water, spearheaded by Chojuro, have been doing, even going as far back as the later days of May as the Mizukage. They don't trust anything that's being said. The Funato are just the ones that have been able to directly rise up against them. And what I like there is that you have 2 moments where they make it clear they don't care about anything the Mist Village has said, because they've used up all their capital with them. The first thing is they call him a smooth talking Mizukage, and then the second thing, when Boruto's saying, isn't there anything we can do to stop this war, Ikada says, go over there and bring me the Mizukage's head. Usually that would not be enough to stop this war given everything that has happened, but I'll settle for his head. And that just kind of shows you that for clans like the Funato clan that feel, and rightfully feel, that they've been wronged by the progress that the Land of Water has had, and that their way of life is being impeded on, and that their cultures are not being respected. It's going to take more than empty words. It's going to take more than promises given by people who don't necessarily have the most goodwill with you. So I like that you see that right there, and I like how when Boruto tries to reason with Ikada even further and talking about Ikatas Dream to connect all the islands, and to be able to do so by building ships and to help with trade and get the islands to all communicate with each other, Ikada essentially says that was a fairy tale dream, and he blames Boruto for that dream coming to an end, because he blames Boruto for the death of his sister Seiren. And there are a couple times in this episode where you see Sarada and Mitsuki, they're essentially on guard. They're ready to do something to try and protect Boruto. And what I like about this right here is that as this is going on, that's when we get our first legitimate sign that, like, Kawaki was not left behind. The last time we saw him, he's making screw faces and he's saying that damn Boruto, but you can tell he's very pissed off. But when Bunten and Kyoho, Dinky, and Awabe and Metal Lee are talking about trying to go join Boruto, Kawaki's not there. And that was something that really stood out. And we end up finding out in this episode that Kawaki is on the ship. Manga readers know that he suppressed his chakra, and Kawaki not only managed to get onto that ship somehow, but he also managed to get onto the mobile fortress that shows up, and it's because he followed Arayumi. So it almost looks like they're setting up Kawaki to go up against Arayumi, which that's gonna be interesting. Again, Arayumi's somebody that it required Chojuro to fight against last time. You're gonna have base Kawaki go up against a Kage level threat, and I know that's one of those things where some people who have not paid attention to how strong these different characters are not going to be able to wrap their heads around the fact that you're going to have a teenager going up against a Kage level threat. And just to be honest with you, that's like a little bit of hypocrisy, because like we really gonna sit there and act like Itachi at the same age of these characters wasn't out here taking out Orochimaru with no difficulty and already being scaled to being at a Kage level. Age is just a number. That's something that Naruto's manga hammered home in the very first arc, where Kakashi was saying that there are going to be children stronger than he is. We've already had Kawaki in the Boruto era already in his base form while being fatigued, being compared to an S rank level threat, which in the Boruto era, S rank level threats are for elite Jonin and for Kage. All of these kids in this generation, while they've grown up in a very soft and peaceful era, because their parents have had nothing but time to sit there and train them, some of these kids are doing stuff their parents couldn't do until we got to the war. Kawaki has progressed. If he takes out Arayumi, I'm not going to be shocked. You have this very false notion that people have that like Kawaki without the karma seal isn't strong. That is the furthest thing from the truth. But essentially, as they're doing all this talking, we get this moment where the mobile fortress that Boruto and them, they didn't destroy, but they essentially destroyed the infrastructure of it, and all those repairs had to be made. The mobile fortress is coming into firing range, and that's when we realized that Ikada was essentially buying time until the mobile fortress showed up. And he says that victory for me is destroying the Shinome, and victory for me is killing the Hidden Mist Ninja. And when they see that mobile fortress, Chojuro is gritting his teeth because he realizes what will happen if that mobile fortress fires over. And essentially it's going to wipe out the Shiome, and it's also going to wipe out their troops. And so you're seeing a real game changer come onto the battlefield right here. It kind of shows that, like, for all the goodwill that Boruto thought he had with Ikada, he doesn't actually know him as well as he thinks. Now, obviously, Ikada is going to get redeemed, because again, you don't drop that line in there about Boruto killing Ikada's brother and not pay that line off right there. But essentially, the episode then transitions over to where when it becomes clear that Ikada can't be reasoned with, and he makes that demand to have Boruto kill the Mizukage, Boruto tells him, I can't go over and betray Chojuro and kill the Mizukage, but what I can do is I can offer up my life to you. And that's when Sarada and Mitsuki, you can tell from the body language, they're not very happy with it. And what I also like about that right there is that it kind of goes back to one of the things that we saw in Naruto's manga, where Hashirama was willing to kill himself if it meant stopping the conflict between the Senju and the Uchiha. It was a request that Madara made to him, and he didn't hesitate to take it up. However, in this instance right here, Boruto was the one that suggested it. It wasn't actually Ikada. So that right there is interesting, because I remember reading from the episode promotional spoilers, it sounded like Ikada was the one telling him to do so, but it looks like right now it's actually Boruto that made the request to end his life. And it's one of those things where he's tried reasoning, he's tried even talking to Kobuna, the son of Funamushi, and letting him know that, like, look, I understand what it's like to lose somebody. Our side's lost people too. You see that Boruto has that memory of not killing Kobuna when he started to. That's likely going to be paid off. I think that you're likely going to see Boruto attempt to kill himself, and Kobuna's going to stop it. But it looks like next week's episode, there's going to be a skirmish right here. So, I mean, this was okay in terms of having the stakes being set and kind of fleshing out more of the characters here. However, I think the big WTF moment here is that essentially Kawaki was suppressing his chakra. That's the big WTF moment that we have to keep our eyes on. However, my episode question to you guys is, do you think it was foolish for Boruto to try and reason with Ikada? Do you think that Boruto essentially should have accepted that he was too far gone and essentially left the matters of the conflict in the Land of Water to Chojuro's Mizukage to deal with? Essentially, Ikada would have been collateral damage, or did Boruto at least owe it to Ikada to try and redeem him? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And as you think about those questions, consider watching the other videos you're seeing on the screen right now.